I want to talk about this book. It's called Dunblane Unburied by Sandra Utley. Came out in about the year 2007. And why does she say unburied? Because apparently in the town where she lived, which was Dunblane, for the first year after the massacre, maybe you don't recall it, in 1996, a schoolroom full of children were killed by a gunman. Later, more recently, Sandy Hook, and also more recently in Pakistan, I believe more than 100 kids in their schoolroom shot dead. Anyway, she says it was buried because during the first year, someone in her town said this proper psychology is for everybody to not talk about it. Well, that may have been part of the cover-up that she got upset about later, and which resulted in the book, Dunblane Unburied. A man named Thomas Hamilton, we can't say that he was arrested or convicted, he died on the spot after the, you know how it is when someone does a massive shooting and then they shoot themselves? And another item she pointed out was that his car was tracked, as all our cars are tracked, by various cameras, and that he was seen to have left on a different ramp that morning, not the one that goes towards that school. So I think he just went elsewhere, and they killed him. I'll tell you who they is, if I can. Killed him, brought him back later, and threw him on the floor, so that in the gymnasium where all these little kiddies were killed, he was seen to be the one, and, case closed. Another point I might mention is that Lord Cullen, I guess in Scotland you're called a lord if you're a judge, you're not a member of the House of Lords. So Lord Cullen ran the inquiry for this, and she could see right on the face of it that some things were just so wrong. For example, the first man to arrive on the scene after the deaths was a Grant McCutcheon off-duty policeman. I think he might have been there because his kid was late for... he wasn't there to check on it. And yet he was not allowed to give testimony at the Cullen inquiry. How can you not take testimony from the person who first saw? Because I suppose he saw the wrong thing and we didn't want to hear about it on the record. And anyway, I just might mention, this is an aside, but this was 2005, they were talking about the Hutton inquiry into the death of David Kelly. Right? David Kelly was like a bioweapons expert in the Iraq. Anyway, a Lord Hutton in Ireland, or in England, but he's from Ireland, was running the inquiry, and I was so innocent. I knew nothing about what now I know, 10 years later, oh, do I know. But I was just unaware of all the chicanery that goes on. And as I passed down the page, I was new to the computer, the page on the screen showed that some people were criticizing Lord Hutton just for having allowed the witnesses to speak in the wrong order. I could see, as a law student, a judge can't do that. He just wouldn't ask for the testimony in the wrong order, would he? And if he would, why? So Sandra Utley, who has no particular credentials for it, could see that this little inquiry was wrong. And another lord named Burton later came out in the newspaper and said, Lord Cullen screwed up his own inquiry because he was at the behest of the Masons. So, you don't usually find one lord saying that to another. Anyway, I don't mean to make a joke of it, and I believe they said a similar thing at Sandy Hook. The parents were kept in the room, like the principal's office, for hours, not allowed to see their child. Imagine, you've been told that your child died, or maybe some parents in the Sandy Hook one, or this one, were simply told, there's a problem here of kids in trouble, but we'll solve it soon. Well, you want to be with your kid. Your kid might be, wounded and suffering. You want to be with your kid. And they kept them for hours. She says more than 3 hours. Just sitting there waiting before they were allowed. Well, I'm sure the reason is, who am I to say I'm sure? I'm guessing the reason is they couldn't have gone into that gymnasium until it was fixed up properly. Another point of interest is they soon raised, R-A-Z-E-D, raised that gymnasium as they raised the offending cafe in the Port Arthur massacre in Australia. So where am I going with this? It must have been the authorities that did it in the first place, because how else would they control the judges later, and why would they, and who are they to prevent other testimony coming forward. What's going on there? Well, it's just it's a standard procedure now. The control of the inquiry so you have to use common sense once in a while. Anyway, I just leave it at that for the moment. But if I may mention that in a certain book written by none other than my good self at the bottom line there, and my colleague McLaughlin, came out with a book called Truth in Journalism, and we pulled apart many stories, a little bit on the Dunblane and many other similar ones that are going on in this world, and sort of lined them up, comparing them, and this book is very interesting. Please get involved in reading this book. Thank you.